We're back with another episode, and today we are talking about a topic that I can't tell you how many times over the years of coaching leaders in the C suite, executives, that you would look at from the outside and say, this person is so successful. This person has got everything all together. They've got all their ducks in a row. And from the outside looking in, you'd say, I want to be just like them. But when I talk to them behind closed doors, I hear two words over and over again. I'm stuck. So today we're going to be diving into this topic. And if we haven't met before, my name is Catie Campbell. I am a certified executive coach. I've worked with over 30,000 leaders in the last 25 years, which sounds crazy when I say it like that. I've started my career at the Pentagon. I work with companies like Chick-fil-A and Crocs and construction companies, fintech companies, startups, Fortune 500s, you name it, I'm in that game. And leaders in all of these different organizations, from the military at the highest ranks to people who are super successful solo entrepreneurs and everybody in between. It is so common for them to tell me, Catie, I'm stuck. What do I do about this? So I reached out to a handful of former coaching clients of mine, people who have gotten themselves unstuck, and we've worked together. And I said, can you go back to that point where we started working together and tell me, like, what was the burning question? What was on your mind? So here's the first one I'll share with you. And this woman said she knew exactly what she wanted to do in her career, like the next phase of her career. And she could not make herself just take the leap. And the crazy part was she had been talking about making this change for years, for at least 3 years. And so when I met her, she was still in this loop of just saying, I can see it. I've got the vision. I know where I want to go, and I can't make myself do it. And I feel stuck in my career. I feel stuck where I am. I feel stuck, and I don't know how to get out of it. And so on the surface, you'd think, well, okay, if you have the vision, why don't you just go do it? If you know what the next step looks like, why wouldn't you just take it? But the reality is it's a lot more complicated than just do it. I mean, Nike has a great slogan of just do it, and we've known that for years. But knowing and doing are two different things. And so when I reached out to another former client of mine, this was something that came up and we worked on for years, which is, I felt very self-aware, but not very changed, meaning they knew what it was they needed to do. They could explain all their patterns, all their triggers, all their issues, but they just kept actively repeating them. And so I want to spend some time unwinding this a little bit, because if you're in this and listening, you've probably been in the same boat, and I have as well. So there were many times in my career where I felt like I knew I wanted to make more money, or I knew I wanted to take on more leadership, or I knew I wanted to take on bigger, challenging, knottier problems, but yet I was staying in the same place. And oftentimes it comes down to feeling a certain way about what the next step might lead to. So what do I mean by that? For some of these folks who I've worked with on this topic of being stuck, it comes down to an insecurity about doing the new thing. So these are people who are running large companies. I mean, I'm talking multi-million, upwards of billion-dollar companies, right? Or billion-dollar divisions. And they're not always the ones running the company. And you think, well, they're not insecure people. Well, they're not. When you're in a role where you're being successful or you're finding a lot of success, you're usually quite secure. It's most common that you are secure in your ability to know what to do next, how to set the strategy, how to have a vision, how to drive the team, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of times when I work with people, with leaders, and they say that they're stuck, there is an insecurity not about who they are right now and the success that they currently have. It's an insecurity about the unknown. Like if I move into a new role, if I take on a new position, if I decide to take over a new company or acquire a new company. I'm working with a leader who's doing that right now. And acquiring a new company, what if I fail at that? What if I don't know what I'm doing? What if the success that I've had where I am right now doesn't translate into the new place where I'm going to go and work or the new company that I'm going to take over? And so that level of insecurity, not about current state, but about future state, will keep people to say, well, I just need to stay where I am, or they won't decide to move forward and take on something new or different because that lack of clarity around what's to come is a lot scarier than staying exactly where they are and just continuing to have success in place. And look, there's nothing wrong with staying where you are, especially if you like what you're doing, right? But I'm talking about if you're feeling this sense of there's more for me, there's different for me, there's bigger for me, there's more challenging for me, whatever it might be. It's why we're talking about this topic to begin with. That sense of like, I'm very self-aware. I know what my triggers are. I know what my patterns are, but I still won't change. Why does that happen? There is this disconnect often with people when I'm coaching them around knowing and doing. The majority of the people that I've worked with in my 20 years plus of working with executives and doing executive development, and then in the last decade plus being a certified executive coach, the majority of the people I'm working with are very self-aware. Not 100% of the time. There's always things to learn. But they're self-aware. They know that they need help, which is why they hired me to begin with. They know that they are repeating a pattern, or I help them find some clarity around that pattern. But once they know the pattern, it does not mean they're going to change. And for most of the people who feel like that, when they are like, I know what my pattern is, but I keep doing it, the stuckness comes from a worry about 9 times out of 10, how am I going to be perceived if I change this pattern? So I'll give you an example. I worked with a leader a couple of years ago who was known for being really hard to work for. He was very demanding. He drove, his team wasn't grinding them to a pulp, but he drove them pretty hard. Like, he had very high expectations. He had very high standards, and he knew that he was tough on feedback. He was tough on performance. He was really tough on numbers. He was great on accountability, right? He was that leader. And people wanted to do really well for him because when they did, they were rewarded. He made sure that they were bonused well. They were compensated well to begin with. When he gave them time off, they had time off, right? He was one of those leaders that let you take time off and close the inbox to your email and your Slack messages, et cetera. So he was terrific, but he drove people really hard when they were on the clock, so to speak. And he, though, had this sort of change of heart and really wanted to figure out, how do I still get the same level of performance out of people but not drive them so hard? Because what he was noticing was some people wouldn't transfer into his division because it was like, oh, I want to be rewarded well, and I want to work hard, and I want to perform well, but I'm scared of this guy. And so he wanted to kind of change his image, and he was really concerned about, if I change my image and if I stop being the driver, if I stop being the person who is just like go, go, go and demanding performance, and I soften up and I take more of a servant leader or heart-led leader kind of mindset, like, what would happen? And so he stayed stuck in this pattern for a long time of wanting to be more empathetic, wanting to be more approachable, wanting to feel more like a human and not just like kind of a drill sergeant. And that's, because that was his reputation. So he was very aware that that was his reputation, but felt stuck in not understanding how to change that. And part of it was he was intimidated by the idea that he might not get the same level of performance and results if he changed to being more of a servant leader, to being more empathetic, to be more human, as opposed to a drill sergeant. And so that awareness that, like, he might actually have to retool how he gets performance, how he gets results, was almost too overwhelming. And he stayed stuck in that pattern for a very long time. As we worked together, and he decided, what we did to get him out of staying stuck in that place was really these like micro movements. And that's what happens a lot in coaching, but these micro movements to demonstrate empathy at the same time he was demanding results. So sometimes it just came through how he was writing a text message or an email. And sometimes that would come through and how he would do his one-on-ones with people. it would be as simple as him just asking more about their lives and making him more vulnerable and sharing about himself as opposed to just only talking about the numbers and only talking about the results. Another question that I got from a former client was that they said, this is what I was specifically struggling with when we started to work together, was around knowing about, am I being thoughtful about decision making, or am I stalling because I'm afraid of what the decision might be? Like, am I stuck? Am I keeping myself stuck because I'm scared, or am I keeping myself stuck because I'm being thoughtful? And this comes up a lot when people have maybe jumped the gun in the past. I have worked with a lot of clients who have ADHD, and a lot of them just like make decisions and then they think about it later, so that they get a little gun shy later on when they say, this is a big decision I need to make about my career or direction that I want to take my team. And so I'm delaying making that move and I'm staying stuck where I am because I don't want to repeat the sins of the past. Like, I don't want to make a decision too early. Conversely, I have a lot of other people that I work with who struggle with anxiety, and they struggle with just confidence more generally. And so sometimes they stay stuck where they are because they will ruminate over a decision. So they're not being thoughtful and saying, let me make a pro-con list, which isn't a really great idea, by the way, but make a pro-con list, or maybe just write out the path of how I'm going to make this decision. They won't do that. They will just think of like the 18,000 directions that if I make this decision and it goes this way, then this could go wrong, and then I'm going to lose my job, and then I'm not going to have money, and then I won't be able to pay my mortgage, and it becomes this like huge snowball of a problem, when it's just like, no, maybe it's just taking an assignment in a different state. No, maybe it is switching industries because you've always wanted to do photography and you've been an accountant for 20 years. Or maybe it's being thoughtful about, okay, so if I want to switch from accounting to photography, what are the 10 steps that I need to make sure I'm doing so I set myself up for success? Instead, they will come in and say, I'm done being an accountant. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to lean into my creativity. But they will tell me, because they've worked extraordinarily hard, all the reasons why it won't work. All the reasons why it won't work. And so I either have people who are so used to jumping the gun that they're scared of making the wrong decision because they've done that before, or I have other people who are ruminating and taking so extraordinarily long to make a decision because they want to just prevent themselves from failing in the first place. So feel a failure from the past because they jumped the gun, or a fear of failure in the future because they're going to talk themselves out of something that they really want. And so for any of these different scenarios, it's really about unwinding it to, I would say, the lowest common denominator, or the root cause of where this is coming from. So if it's an insecurity, we got to deal with insecurity. It has nothing to do with being stuck. If this is, I have impulse control and I have a hard time not thinking decisions through and only doing that in retrospect, it is giving them a pathway to think it all the way through so they can feel confident in making the jump and not feeling like, oh man, I'm gonna make a decision too early and then regret it later. For the folks who are going to ruminate it, it is getting them out of the pattern of saying, and then this will happen, and then this will happen, and then this will happen. I mean, nobody is a fortune teller. So the staying stuck is so common, but it is usually born out of something like anxiety or impulse control or insecurity, or just general fear of the unknown, fear of not being successful. So when people come to me, especially in a coaching capacity, and they're like, Catie, I feel stuck, I don't know what to do, where we will always take the conversation is, I'm going to ask a ton of questions to understand, is this an insecurity thing? Is it a fear of failure? Is it a fear of jumping the gun? Is it a fear of the unknown consequences of a decision that I'm going to make? Because that's where we need to focus the conversation. And it's not about being stuck in place. That is like a lagging indicator that you're insecure. It's a lagging indicator that you've made poor decisions in the past. It's a lagging indicator that sometimes you like ruminate on a decision and you come up with all sorts of reasons why it won't work as opposed to all the reasons why it will. So if you've been recently in this place or in a scenario of feeling stuck, I would be spending time really thinking through, what is this really about? Am I afraid? Am I insecure? Am I usually making decisions too quickly without thinking? Am I making a decision thinking through all the worst case scenarios and not the reasons why it will be successful? And that's where you need to start. And so if you want to explore this topic more, drop a comment below, hit me up, send me a DM on Instagram, a Facebook message, a TikTok DM, and let me know. Where have you been feeling stuck? How is this really impacting you getting what you want? A new promotion, running a new company, changing a career, or just really doing something different for yourself. Let me know what else would be helpful if we want to address this topic even further. And I just want to say thank you. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate all the comments and the support. And I look forward to getting into our next topic soon.